Well, welcome everybody. Glad you are watching this video. Hopefully we've gotten all of our technical difficulties figured out by the time you're watching this, and we have 4 videos uploaded to our YouTube channel with our mental health mini conference sessions. We have sessions from the four of us that you're seeing now on the screen. I'm Daniel Davis, Sean Nelson over there with the hat on. That's Marcus Curry, wearing glasses like me. And there is Rachel Zobek. And so thankful for all of their gifts and willingness to participate. And especially given the fact that we really called a major audible in doing this all virtually instead of live. Guys, thanks for your flexibility on that. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to end this night with just some practical questions moving forward. And give you guys a chance to kind of speak directly to everyone about just some practical tips moving forward. And so the first thing I wanted to ask you guys is, what are your kind of entry level, if I'm struggling right now with my mental health, if I'm feeling depressed or anxious, if I'm feeling any manner of those things, like struggling with grief, struggling with past trauma, and that's just really making my life hard. What are some very practical first steps that you think would be helpful to take? And so I'm going to start with Rachel. Rachel, would you kind of speak into that and give some good first steps?
Yeah. So I think with that sort of entry-level mindset, I would look probably at lifestyle factors and consider sleep and exercise, nutrition, water, all the kind of basic building blocks there. And if there's something out of balance, that could affect the whole system. I would also say sometimes it's really helpful just to step back and look at the things that are inside your box of control versus outside. I know for myself, it's easy to sometimes feel anxious or stress over things that are outside when we don't actually have influence over it. And so kind of redirecting your focus to problem solving here and then letting these outside things go. And I would say just being open with your community of trusted people and being willing to say, here's this that I'm bringing into the light, even though it's hard. Even if it's just at the early stages and it's not a crisis yet, it's still really valuable to bring it to the light. So.
That's great. That's really good. How about you, Marcus?
I would just echo off what Rachel said. Just kind of look at the small things to see what we can change first if needed, such as just self-care, making sure you're getting the sleep, proper nutrition, hydration, but then also going back, what are those things we can and cannot change? But then looking at community, maybe, do I have a healthy community? What does that look like? Because we're all created for that relational aspect. And as we, live in our faith community, do we need to change something there? Or what are the relationships that we have? Are we either doing too much or too little? So maybe have some time to evaluate on our community that we have. And that could be, hey, we really don't have much of a community and we need to build that up. Or maybe we're just doing it totally wrong with expectations that really aren't realistic.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Marcus. Sean, what about you?
So if you're talking just like very first steps, things to do when you're feeling the pressure, my suggestion would just be talk to someone. Doesn't necessarily have to be a therapist or a pastor, but just someone. And this mainly comes from my own experience as someone who lives inside my own head and deals primarily with issues of like anxiety and things like that. Talking to people helps you put it in perspective very often, and getting someone else's perspective on it can very much help kind of check your own responses to things.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm hearing you guys, a lot of pay attention to physical realities, do some mental exercise as far as like what's in my control, what's out of my control, and then just really reach out and get connected to people. Those are some themes I'm hearing across all you guys, and that's super helpful. Like as a pastor, is one thing that I just want to say, like from my end, is like, don't be afraid of asking these questions. I feel like there's sort of maybe as a first step is just like, don't be scared if there's something going on in you that feels wrong or broken. I think sometimes we feel bad for feeling bad, and that doesn't help anything, you know? And so I just want to encourage anybody who's out there who's just hurting and wanting to know if there's a way forward. The one thing is like, don't be afraid. Like Jesus came for weak, hurting people. He didn't come for the well. He came for sick people. And so don't be afraid of admitting that you need help, of just reckoning with the turmoil and stuff that's going on in you. So when you see those kind of warning lights going off in your life, or you're getting angry or crying a lot, and just sort of seeing some of those indications that something's not right, don't be afraid of that, but lean into it, get curious about it, and do all those things that Sean and Rachel and Marcus just encouraged us to do. So that's good. That's some good first steps. I appreciate that, guys. I'm curious, like, you guys have all, you know, are professionals, are well read in a lot of these issues, and so I'm curious, what are the most helpful resources that you could recommend, and maybe kind of relate the resources you recommend back to the talk that you gave, you know? So on the topics that you gave, maybe what are some of your favorite resources? And then if you just have one that you just have to throw in there because it's your fave, you can do that as well. So we'll start with Sean this time, since he was last.
Okay. Well, so this, if you listen to my talk, this may sound weird because I spent a lot of time talking about how non-spiritual factors can impact your mental well-being and stuff. And that seems weird coming from a guy who works at church and should be talking about spiritual factors as well. But most of my resources are recommended on the spiritual side. So dealing with the spiritual side of mental health. So I'd highly recommend any of the works on this topic by David Murray. He has a few books. One of them, Christians Get Depressed Too. An older book, but a good one, is Spiritual Depression by Martin Lloyd-Jones. He does a very good job of unpacking all the different ways that our spiritual life can impact our mental and physical health. And another one that is very old, but still good, if you can handle archaic language, is Precious Remedies Against Satan's Devices. It's a Puritan book dealing primarily with the different ways our enemy will attack us, and some of the things he deals with is mental attacks as well.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Thanks. Rachel, how about you?
Yeah, I'm taking notes. I'm excited. I like to hear new resources. So let's see. I brought the actual book so I could remember. This one is called Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortlund.
Yeah.
It's the heart of Christ for sinners and sufferers. And so this is a really beautiful reminder of how Christ, especially when he was on the earth, approached us. And so that's encouraging to me because it reminds me that he cares and that he sees us. So Let's see. I had a few. I don't want to overwhelm. This one, Traveling Light by Max Lucado.
Yeah.
Have you read it? It's good.
I've read a long time ago, so it's been a long time. Yeah.
It's based on Psalm 23, and it just breaks down kind of each phrase into a different burden that we carry that Christ can help us with. And this is a classic, Boundaries by Drs. Cloud and Townsend. You know, they have a whole series, Boundaries in Marriage, Boundaries in Work.
I'm currently listening to Boundaries with teenagers.
Oh, wow.
Because I have teenagers now.
Yeah, that's good. Just some practical ways to kind of be mindful of your relationships and your time and what you're allowing to influence you, things like that. I'll skip that one. This is a resource that I really like for addiction, and it's In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts by Gabor
Cool name.
Mate. Yeah. It's long, but it's really good. It gives a lot of just personal stories of his work as a physician and working with people and some of the underlying reasons why addictions kind of continue. And then the last one is The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. And I like this one because it reminds us that anxiety can be useful, that God gives us a sense of fear to detect actual threat. That's the purpose, right? So we can be in fight, flight, freeze when we need to. And also, the better we are able to recognize the actual fear, the better we can be at recognizing things that are not threats and that we don't have to spend all of our mental energy on. So it's not a Christian book, but it's a good one as well. All right.
Yeah, that's
We'll
good.
leave it there.
All right, thank you, Rachel. This is good. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this and write all these down too. So, all right, Marcus, what about you, man?
So going back to trauma with kids, I recommend anything by Karen Purvis. She is wonderful what she's done in her career, but she recently passed away, sadly. But she's based out of TCU, and she has an institute, and her work is going to continue going. But it's trust-based relationship and looking at trauma and kids. And it's a great resource for parents. There's actually camps, different seminars you can go to as well. So anything with her name on it, I highly recommend, just to understand attachment issues with children. And they do a great work, her institute, as far as connecting with parents and then also ultimately connecting with kids for that ultimate healing. So kind of moving away from her into more, I guess, interpersonal, I would recommend a personal favorite of mine is Brennan Manning's Abba's Child. Brennan Manning is kind of the main guy behind Ragamuffin Gospels. That movement, if you're familiar with Rich Mullins, any of those guys, it's a great book at just this reminder that as believers, we're truly our Father's child, and sometimes we lose that connection as we go through our daily life and just different seasons. And just a little bit of his background, he recovered from alcohol, and so he kind of, throughout that process of the book, he weaves that through there. Another author is Kurt Thompson or Thomas. He's a psychiatrist that and a believer that looks at just a relationship with our soul and to some degree soul care as well. So a great resource there with those.
Yeah, is that the Anatomy of the Soul by Kurt Thompson?
Yes, that was his first books. And then he recently has one over shame as well.
Yeah, he did The Soul of Shame, I think is what it was called, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anatomy of the Soul, those two titles. So those are great books, as well as navigating those. And then a local resource that I use quite a bit is Mosaic of Mercies. It's an organization. It's faith-based, but a group of counselors and other providers in the area that's just designed to give a hub of resources. Whether it's, hey, a parent needs, I need information on this. They can get that from the website, or they might have groups that are going on, or they can connect you to providers for a specific thing that you or your family could actually seek professional help out.
Yeah.
Actually thought of another while we were talking, a couple more if you got time.
Yeah, go for it.
So one of them that I've really benefited from are certain books by Ed Welch, Running Scared, dealing specifically with fear and anxiety. And then one more that I thought about after I said, living in my own head, one that really helped me was Think Again. Subtitle is Relief from the Burden of Introspection, and it's by a guy named Jared Mellinger. Both are Christian books, but he takes a good long look at what is healthy and non-healthy introspection. So basically getting you out of navel gazing and kind of back into asking good questions and then moving on when you're done.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, if we haven't kept you busy enough, I'll tell you, everybody's reading list just went from here to here. But one of my absolute favorite books is, and this isn't just for this topic, it's just in any genre, it's called The Relational Soul. It's by Richard Plass and James Cofield. Just a really good book, like entry level. How do I pursue relationship with God and relationship with others in a way that brings about healing and wholeness? And it's just a really beautifully done book, and opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. It's got some good stuff about, understanding your story, just attachment, things like that. But it also just really theologically attuned. And so I think it's a great resource, The Relational Soul. There's a book for those who've experienced trauma, and called The Body Keeps the Score, by Vander Kolk. And it's kind of a standard that I hear a lot of people go to. There's also a book called Rid of My Disgrace by a guy named Justin Holcomb, and it's about surviving sexual trauma, sexual abuse. And it's a good resource as well, just for anybody who's lived through that hardship. And so those are a few resources there. I've also found as very helpful, there was a book called The Whole-Brained Child by Daniel Siegel. And as a parent, you're always wondering, what is happening in this child's head? And it was just a really, he's not a believer. It's not a theological book at all. It's like a scientific, neuroscientist, who understands the way brains work and how they're developing, who understands some about the way brains work. Nobody really gets that completely, but has a lot of experience in that field. So those are some. And then another, well, I could go on and on. That's probably good. I want to second Rachel's recommendation for The Gentle and Lowly as well. Beautiful book, super encouraging and life-giving. So yeah, that's good. We'll leave that there. And then the last thing I would say, I kind of referred to something back a second ago that I want to bring up and kind of ask your thoughts about before we do our final encouragements. I mentioned warning signs that things might not be going okay earlier, but I think that might be helpful to tell people some warning signs that maybe they need to get some care or look into what's going on in their own soul. So what are some things to be looking for that might indicate, oh man, maybe I'm not really healthy right now mentally, and I need to spend some time investing in my mental health? What are some warning signs that you would encourage people to look out for? I should probably tell one of you to talk. I just kind of threw it out there. Marcus, how about you?
I would say first, listen to the people around you. I know sometimes we might not like what friends or family might not say, or we might not accept their help, so to speak, but use that as at least a sounding board. It could be something that's truly legit, and either advice, at least filter through that. Listen to what they're saying, and maybe take a sample from, maybe if you're close to people at work, family, just different areas that you're a part of, and just listen to see if they notice anything about you. It might not be anything drastic, but they might just notice, hey, your behavior is changing slightly. That way, because a lot of times we don't notice these things. and the people around us actually do. And so just listen to your community.
Yeah, that's good. Sean, Rachel, y'all have anything to add?
Who do you want to go first?
Sean, you can go since you started talking. Sorry.
Okay. So I'd add a couple things. One is something I call spiraling, which is where you keep kind of coming back to the exact same thoughts, the exact same worries or like self-condemnations, things like that. And you can't seem to get away from them. Like everything somehow loops back in on itself to right where you started. If you notice your mind doing that a lot, you probably need to be talking to someone. Another one I'd mention is, it'll sound weird to say it this way, but out of control behavior. And not in like you're running wild and screaming and yelling, but like if you notice you're constantly buying stuff on Amazon or something like that, or you're eating all the time when you normally don't. Things where you seem to lack self-control. That's something to watch out for, because that could be a sign of, hey, I'm extremely depressed, or I'm trying to avoid something, or something along those lines.
That's good. What about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I agree with all of the things that were said. And yeah, changes in behavior, changes in routine, which is hard because with COVID, everyone's routine has kind of changed.
Routine, yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, there's kind of the two sides, right? There's like the behavior side and noticing changes there, and then the thoughts. And if you can be still and quiet enough to really notice, oh, my thoughts have turned a little more hopeless, or have turned a little more catastrophizing than normal, right? That's kind of an indicator, because we know that people who are anxious and or depressed have more negative automatic thoughts. And maybe we're not even aware that that's happening. But if we slow down enough, sometimes we can see it. And then in your relationships, if you're finding yourself more reactive than normal, maybe kind of being curious about what's driving that. Am I feeling fearful, angry, hopeless? What's behind that? And then of course, changes in appetite, sleep, those types of things as well.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't think I have. Maybe one thing to add. Maybe one thing is just if you notice that there's just an area of your life that you are more and more protective of. You know what I mean? So like if there's just like if you just have a secret or a place that nobody can see or touch, you know, that's maybe growing, or you're, you know, feeling really reactive around that. That might be something to just pay attention to, is like, what are you keeping people away from? What are you protecting? And getting curious about that. That's good. So I wanted to end with just, you know, a word of encouragement for everyone. So if you could just kind of, if somebody's watching this and hurting right now, what's one thing you would say to them just as an encouragement? And that could be like a scripture that's been helpful to you, just a thought, like a parting thought. But like, if somebody's just looking at this and saying, man, I don't know how I'm going to make it, what's something you'd say as an encouragement to somebody who's hurting? And we'll start with Rachel this time.
Man, I mean, I would just say thank you for watching this and for just listening this far. And it is really hard to reach a point where you feel like things are darker, or it's harder to see if they could get better. But we serve a God who is bigger than all of those struggles and can redeem anything he chooses to. You're not alone. There's certainly a lot of people who struggle with all of the things we've talked about, even more than we know, because it is kept so quiet often. If you're thinking about saying something to someone, I would say that's a good idea. And I hope that you find someone who's ready to listen and that you can trust them. So
That's good.
wish I could hug you through the screen. Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome. All right, Sean, how about you?
So a couple things. One would be to definitely, as a word of encouragement, a place to go for encouragement, I should say, read the Psalms. There's something in the Psalms for literally any situation in life you can be in. And a word from someone going through whatever it is you're going through, and a word from God to that person in almost every single psalm. If you want a place to start, Psalm 103 is my personal favorite, and always a good encouragement. As a personal word of encouragement, I'll say one of the most important things that anyone can realize when they're feeling that they are struggling in some way is that there is no shame. There is no shame whatsoever in struggling. There's no shame in not being okay, because we live in a fallen and broken world. And if anybody should not have shame in this life, it is Christians, because we of all people recognize everything is broken, not just the way we're feeling. And so you can be not okay, and it's perfectly fine. And also, I'll say there's no shame in doing what needs to be done to be better. A lot of people get worried if they need to go to counseling or take medication or things like that. None of that is problematic. All of these things are part of God's grace to us. And so we need to be ready to take the steps we need to take, because we can't be held back. It only ends up hurting us more.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Sean. All right, Marcus.
I would echo everything that Rachel and Sean has said. I would also just remind, seeking help can be one of the most terrifying and hardest things a person has ever done up until that point in their life. Whether we're seeking help from an addiction or just internal thought process, or you name it, that means going outside of something that we're not comfortable with. We're already comfortable with whatever wound that we have. We feel that pain, but we're really comfortable with that routine. And so getting that help is, we have to break out of that routine. And one, it's going to be tough. It's one of the toughest things. So whether that's going to a recovery meeting for the first time, and hey, see if you can find someone to go with you. Call someone up. Hey, walk me through that door and help me sit in that chair. Or if it's going to a counseling session, have someone there's COVID rules, but have someone drive you there. Have someone there to pick you up afterwards and go get a drink at Sonic or something. But seeking that help can be the toughest thing that you do. But my goal is to encourage you, if that's something that you choose to do, it can be the most rewarding thing you've ever done. One, to understand yourself better. One, to understand that there is redemption. There is that grace. There is the removal of shame. It's a beautiful process, but it's also one of the most hardest processes that we can go through.
Yeah, that's good. Well, a couple of things that come to mind is just remembering in the middle of your sorrow and hurt to look to Jesus. I mean, the Bible calls him a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and that he himself bore our sorrows. You know, that when we think of our suffering, just remember that we are being called to find comfort in a God who knows suffering, who knows shame and sorrow, who knows abandonment, who knows abuse, who knows all of these things. And so just remember, we are being called by a God who gets it, and who has endured a suffering that we'll never have to endure. He bore the punishment for our failures, and he purchased the healing of our wounds. And so I just want to encourage you, look to Jesus, because like in him, this is the good news that we have to like hang on to, is that our suffering, our brokenness, our mental illness, our loneliness, our sadness, our fears, like it will all expire at the return of Jesus. Like there is an end to our hurt. And so like you have every reason to hope, because the tomb is empty and Jesus is alive and he's coming back. And so we don't have to be afraid of where he might lead us in this life, of what the healing process looks like, of what growing looks like, of entering into those counseling sessions or having that conversation that you're terrified to have. Like he said, he's with us always to the end of the age. And so I just want to encourage you to take courage in Jesus. So I guess we'll leave it there. And guys, I'm so thankful for y'all's time. Sean, Rachel, Marcus, really appreciate your words of wisdom and encouragement. And I hope that people watch this and that they've found encouragement. If anybody needs any help, needs any encouragement, wants some resources, please reach out to us. My email is daniel@redemptionpearland.com. And I can get you in touch with any of these guys too, but please know we're here for you. We want to encourage you along this journey. So thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.